بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أنزل الفرقان على عبده ليكون للعالمين نذيرا، والصلاة والسلام على من بعثه شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا، والصلاة والسلام على من أذهب عنهم الرجس أهل البيت وظهرهم تطهيرا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. If one wanted to understand an individual who mastered one specific area in his life, that would be a difficult task. Then how difficult would it be to understand an individual who mastered multiple dimensions in his or her existence? And this is the difficulty one faces when examining the character of Fatima salamullahi alayha. If I was to examine Fatima biologically in regards to her relationships, for example, Fatima as a wife, or Fatima as a mother, or even Fatima as a daughter. But I then can examine Fatima intellectually in regards to the knowledge that Fatima salamullahi alayha possessed within her mind. When somebody, for example, looks at the sermon of Fadak, he realizes that Fatima alayhi salam was a lady of profound and astounding knowledge. On one level, and on another level, you find that Fatima alayhi salam was so willing to give the knowledge that she had. That's why you find one day a lady would come to Fatima alayhi salam and she would ask her, saying, "Ya Fatima, my mother has problems in regards to her salah. Could you please answer some of her questions?" So Fatima alayhi salam willingly would say, "Yes, let this lady come to me." So they say that this lady, old lady, would come to Fatima and she would ask her one question. Fatima would answer it. She then would ask Fatima a second question. She would answer it. A third, a fourth, a fifth, until she asks Fatima 10 questions total. At this point, the lady feels embarrassed from Fatima alayhi salam, saying, "Ya Fatima, please excuse me for my inconvenience. I have many more questions. Yeah, I feel embarrassed to take away from your time in asking you these questions. Do you mind?" Look at the willingness of Fatima in giving away the knowledge that she had. See, because many times you'll find people who are knowledgeable, but they choose to keep that knowledge to themselves. And I fail to understand this as a human being, because when the Prophet comes and says that to everything there's a tax, and the tax of knowledge is giving it, the Prophet is making a fundamental statement. He's saying that if you have knowledge, the tax of having this knowledge is to give it. If I know one hadith, I should be speaking to the people around me about that hadith. If I have one ayah memorized, I should be speaking to the people around me about that ayah that I have memorized. That Fatima alayhi salam instantly would reply with a reply that's so powerful and explains and reflects to us the willingness that Fatima had in giving her knowledge and in showing her intellectual abilities. She would reply, what would she say? She would say, "Oh lady, let me give you a scenario. Imagine there was a man who was asked to take this heavy bucket from the top of the mountain to the bottom, under the condition that he'll be given a large reward. Would he feel tired carrying out this task?" The lady would reply saying, "No, he would be willing to do it." Fatima alayhi salam would instantly reply, she would say, "Then how could I feel embarrassed or indeed feel hassled in giving you this knowledge when for each answer I give you, I receive more awards than that which is between the sky and the earth?" That Fatima alayhi salam, she was willing to give her knowledge intellectually. Or should I examine Fatima spiritually? and the spirituality that Fatima Zahra alayhi salam reflected in her life. To the extent that one day Fatima Zahra alayhi salam is sitting in her house, and Al-Hasan ibn Ali would recognize that Fatima was doing dua after dua for the neighbors. He would say, Ya Fatima, you've done dua for the neighbors, but you're forgotten yourself. What's the problem? Instantly Fatima would reply with these famous lines saying, Bunay Hasan, Al-Jar qabla dar, the neighbor before myself. Look at the altruism of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. Or should I examine Fatima simply from an objectively historical basis? Meaning the oppression that Fatima Zahra alayhi salam went through. From seeing the death of Muhammad at 18, to seeing Ali ibn Abi Talib dragged before her eyes at 18, or to shaking the hand of death at the tender age of 19. From which aspect do I begin to examine Fatima Zahra alayhi salam? And for that reason, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he attests to this fact that it's impossible to comprehend the greatness of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam when he comes and says, إِنَّمَا سُمِّيَتْ فَاطِمَةً لِأَنَّ الْخَلْقَ فُطِمُوا عَنْ مَعْرِفَتِهَا. Imam Sadiq, what does he say? He says Fatima was named Fatima because mankind have been weaned from her gnosis. Now, for those of you who are mothers, you know when you have a child, you eventually wean him. You wean him, meaning what? You stop breastfeeding him. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he uses a specific word. He says, لِأَنَّ الْخَلْقَ فُطِمُوا عَنْ مَعْرِفَتِهَا. He says she's been named Fatima because mankind have been weaned from knowing who Fatima Zahra alayhi salam is. Someone will come and say, why is Fatima such a difficult character to understand? For three reasons. There are three things that Fatima Zahra manifested within her character that made her so unique and that elevated her status upon the status of anybody else. Number one, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam's existence began before her birth and it continued after her death. See, a typical human being, his existence begins when he's born and it ends when he dies. For Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, birth was not the beginning and death isn't the end. Meaning when the hadith comes and says that Fatima hiya nurun tahta arshillah. Fatima is a light under the throne of Allah. Meaning Fatima existed with the existence of the throne of Allah. Number one. Number two, Fatima's existence doesn't end when she dies. In what way? On the day of judgment, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam is going to be approached by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She's going to be confronted by His Almighty. And He's going to say, oh Fatima, with whose case do you want me to begin with first? Do you want me to begin with the case of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, your son? She would say no. Do you want me to begin with the case of Abbas, son of al-Banin? She would say no. Do you want me to begin with the event of Qasim, son of Hassan? She would say no. Do you want me to begin with the event of Ali al-Akbar, the very Shabih of Rasulullah? She would say no. Instantly Fatima Zahra would have a tray in front of her hands. She would remove the cover from the tray and she would say, Allahumma ahkum bayni wa bayna qati'ai hadhihi al-kufuf. She would say, oh Allah, I want you to judge between me and between the one who cut these two arms. Meaning the role of Fatima will continue even after her death in the day of judgment, as mentioned by the hadith. Number one, Fatima's existence began before birth and it will continue after death. Number two, a typical human being, you and I, our anger and our happiness is dependent or should be dependent on the anger and happiness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was one individual in history whose anger and happiness wasn't dependent on Allah, but Allah's anger and happiness was dependent on them. When the Prophet comes and speaks about Fatima, what does he say? He says, Fatima bid'atun minni yarḍa Allahu liriḍāhā wa yaghḍab lighadabiha. He says, Fatima is a part of me. Allah is happy with the happiness of Fatima. And Allah becomes angry with the anger of Fatima. Now, how you apply this to your historical knowledge of those who made Fatima upset is up to you. And you'll recognize how Allah thought about those specific individuals. Number two, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, is anger and happiness? Allah was dependent on it. Number 3, and most importantly, which I'll be focusing on in this majlis, is that Fatima Zahra was not created to serve a purpose. She herself was the purpose. What am I trying to say? Now, we have a hadith which comes and mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam because of 2 individuals. Allah one day would come and speak to Adam alayhi salam. He would say, Ya Adam, lawla abdayn min ibadi lama khalaqtuk. He would say, Oh Adam, were it not for 2 individuals, I would not have created you. He would say, Allah, who are those individuals? Allah would then reply saying, the first one is Ali ibn Abi Talib, and the second one is Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Yet, if Allah created Adam because of Muhammad and Ali, then Allah created Muhammad and Ali because of Fatima. A hadith comes forward and tells us, Qudsi. Now, as you know, you have a hadith narrated by an infallible or a human, then you have a hadith narrated by Allah Himself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He speaks to the Holy Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, He tells him, Ya Muhammad, lawla aliyun lama khalaqtuk. Were it not for Ali, I wouldn't have created you. Wa ya Muhammad, lawla aliyun. Yes, He says, Ya Muhammad, lawla ali lama khalaqtuk, wa lawla aliyun. He tells them, O Prophet of Islam, were it not for Muhammad, I would not have created Ali. And He tells them, were it not for Ali, I would not have created you. وَلَوْلَا فَاطِمَةَ لَمَا خَلَقْتُكُمَا. He says, and were it not for Fatima, I wouldn't have created the both of you. Now, a fundamental question needs to be asked that typically is looked over. Many times we hear this hadith narrated, but we don't understand the science behind this hadith. Why is the creation of Muhammad and Ali dependent on Fatima Zahra? Why? You see, brothers and sisters, because Allah created prophets and Imams to spread the religion of Islam. Yet Islam is a religion of multiple layers and multiple dimensions. You have Islam. The next phase is Iman. After Iman comes Yaqeen. Yet after Yaqeen comes a specific status which is known as Wilaya. Wilaya is what? Wilaya is translated literally as obedience or authority. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the prophets to spread Islam. Yet Islam was a means to initiate Wilaya, meaning Adam came to become a tool to spread the message of Wilaya. Ibrahim a.s. was a prophet who was sent to carry on that piece, to carry on that book until it reaches the Prophet of Islam so that he can complete Wilaya. Meaning Islam as a religion, its essence, its core, its ethos is Wilaya. That's when it comes to ask the question, what does this have to do with Fatima Zahra alayhi salam? Wilaya was manifested by Fatima. Meaning what? The true core of Wilaya is Fatima. Why? Number one, what is Wilaya? Wilaya is a transfer of authority from Allah to the Prophet, from the Prophet to the Imam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this authority, which is known as Wilaya Mutlaqah, absolute Wilaya. This Wilaya is then given to the Prophet, and this Prophet is given to who? This Wilaya by the Prophet is given to who? To the Imam. Now, if I want to understand how Fatima is the essence of Wilaya, I have to ask the fundamental question. Is there a connection between the Prophet and between Imamat? If there is a link between them, then the essence of Wilaya is that link. Because were it not for that link, then Wilaya would have failed to reach the Imam by the Prophet. Let's ask the simple question. Who was the bridge between prophethood manifested by Muhammad to Imam manifested by Ali ibn Abi Talib? Now, I'm not going to answer the question. I'm going to pose for you a number of questions. You answer them and conclude through logical reasoning who is this link between Imamah and prophethood. Number one, who was the only individual in history that was the child left behind by Muhammad? Number one. Number two, who was the only individual that was qualified of marrying Ali? I'm not going to answer. Number two, who was the only individual who was referred to as a part of Muhammad? Number one. Number two, who was the only individual who would tend to the wounds of Ali? Number two. Number three, who was the only individual who would be stood up by when she would walk into a room by Muhammad? Number one. And number two, who was the only individual who did what? Who would understand Ali? I didn't answer any of these questions. Yet most likely a specific name came to your mind, which was Fatima. Meaning what? Fatima to Zahra was that bridge between Wilaya, going from the Prophet, to Wilaya, reaching Ali ibn Abi Talib. Therefore, if I want to understand Fatima, in essence, I have to first understand Wilaya. When Imam al-Sadiq comes and says, وَإِنَّمَا سُمِّيَتْ فَاطِمَةٌ لِأَنَّ الْخَلْقَ فُطِمُوا عَنْ مَعْرِفَتِهَا. Imam al-Sadiq is making an essential point. He's saying Fatima is not simply Fatima, daughter of Muhammad, mother of Hassan, of Hussein, of Zayd. No, no, no. There is a more deep aspect to who Fatima Zahra is. Therefore, if I want to understand Fatima, I have to understand what Wilaya is. Number one, what is Wilaya? I'm going to give you two verses from the whole Quran. These are two verses you can use with your brothers of different sects to establish the importance of Ali ibn Abi Talib within the whole Quran. Now, we're not going to give hadith. Hadith is important, but hadith is secondary when it comes in front of the whole Quran. One of the biggest problems that we all face when trying to prove Shia Islam is that we refer to a hadith. Hadith, the man sitting in front of you, he doesn't believe in the hadith you're giving him. Give him something which he believes in, which is the Quran. Quran is that platform. It's that table of uniformity where we all tend to unite upon, which is Quran, yes? And even Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they come and they tell us that our hadith are only authentic under the condition that they correlate and are parallel with the whole Quran. What is Wilaya? I'll give you two verses. Number one, chapter 4, verse 59. If you can write these verses down, that would be unbelievable. Chapter 4, verse number 59. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does he say? He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, ati'u Allah, wa ati'u Rasulah, wa ulil amri minkum. O you who believe, pay obedience to Allah and give obedience to the Prophet and give obedience to those who are vested with authority. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentioned in this verse three groups: himself, the Prophet, and ulil amr. Yet notice how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't put the name of anybody from Ahlul Bayt. One of the biggest arguments that you'll find, you'll say, if Allah really chose Ali ibn Abi Talib as the Khalifa, why isn't his name mentioned in the Holy Quran? Well, number one, that Quran would have been torn. And number two, if they had the audacity to sit on the chest of Hussein and cut his neck, who was the manifestation of Quran, do you think they wouldn't have ripped the Quran if it had the name of Hussein mentioned? Of course they would. Yet Allah comes and says, وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ. He kept it general. Yet then Allah gave you a second verse which clarified who those ulil amr are. You see, because the beauty of the Quran is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it a self-explanatory book. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib comes and says, فَسِّرُ الْقُرْآنَ بِالْقُرْآنِ. Explain the Quran through Quran. Yes? If I want to understand who those ulil amr are, I have to go to another verse, chapter 5, verse number 55 of the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does he say? He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, إِنَّمَا وَلِيُّكُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَهُمْ رَاكِعُونَ. Allah comes and says, he says, indeed, your wali, ulil amr, same derivative word, wali. إِنَّمَا وَلِيُّكُمُ اللَّهُ. Number one, Allah is your wali, Allah is your authority. وَرَسُولُهُ, and his prophets. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, and those who believe. Allah then explains who are those who believe. So that's not any Tom, Dick, and Harry can come and say, yeah, well, that person is ulil amr. Khalifa number one is ulil. No, no, no. Allah made it very specific as to who ulil amr are. He says, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Oh Allah, who are those who have iman? الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَهُمْ رَاكِعُونَ. Those who do what? They establish prayer. They give charity while in ruku'ah. Today, examine any book of hadith. Sunan Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Bukhari, Bihar al-Mar, Al-Kafi, whatever it may be, any hadith, there isn't one hadith that mentions that the person giving charity while in ruku' is anyone other than Ali ibn Abi Talib, Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi. Allah can clarify who is it he who gives charity while being in ruku'. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it very clear in the Quran. Why? Because today one of the biggest ironies of all ironies in history is that there are specific individuals who attempt to alter verses within the Holy Quran. They amend it. Allah mentions this in the Holy Quran. What does He say? He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He says, هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابِ هُنَّ آيَاتٌ مُحْكَمَاتٌ وَمِنْهُمْ أُخَرُ مُتَشَابِهَاتٌ فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ ابْتِغَاءَ الْفِتْنَةِ وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِهِ وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ إِنَّ رَبَّنَا آمَنَّا بِمَا أَنزَلْتَ. Allah continues the verse. He says within the Holy Quran, there are specific people, by the way, this is Surah Al-Imran, chapter number, within the Holy Quran, Al-Imran, verse number 7, Allah comes and says there are specific people who strive to depend on verses which are mutashabih. Because as you know, within the Holy Quran, you have a muhkam verse, a decisive, and then an allegorical verse. Allah comes and says, those who have a sickness in their heart strive to follow the mutashabih. Why? Ibtigha' al-fitna. Number one, fitna. Fitna is what? Discord. Today, you know who's coming in discord in the world today. Those who are claiming to love Muhammad yet burning the shrines of the companions of Muhammad. Those who say we love Muhammad but they're busy exhuming bodies of the companions of Muhammad. Ibtigha' al-fitna. Number one. وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِهِ. Therefore, they can change the true and essential meaning. Ta'wil. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ ابْتِغَاءَ الْفِتْنَةِ وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِهِ. Allah comes and says there is a specific group of people, they follow the mutashabih. Therefore, I'm not only going to give you chapter 4 verse 59, I'm going to give you chapter 5 verse 55 to clarify who that's what he is. And we establish that it's Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now someone may come and ask a question, why is this important? It's essential. Why? Because you find that each prophet represented a specific letter. Islam was completed when those letters came together. Let me explain. Jesus was a letter. Moses was a letter. Ibrahim was a letter. Islam was completed with the man who Allah commanded the Prophet to hold his hand up. Why? Because it was when all those letters united and made a word. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes in and says, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. He says, today I've completed your religion. Why was Islam completed? Somebody come and say, Musa alayhi salam, why was he able to complete Islam? Isa, why wasn't he able to complete Islam? Why was Ali ibn Abi Talib able to complete Islam? Because Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen was that man who brought all letters and made them a word. That word was what? Ali. That's why Allah mentioned in the Holy Quran, وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ فِي Imam al-Mubin Ahsanat. And everything we have manifested it into an Imam. Someone come and say, brother, give me proof. One day, the Holy Prophet of Islam is sitting with a companion by the name of Jundub. Doesn't Ya Jundub? And please pay attention to this hadith. This hadith isn't only to entertain, it's a hadith which proves a bigger point. He tells him, Ya Jundub, if you want to see Adam and his asceticism, Jesus and his obedience, Musa and his strength, Ibrahim and his friendliness, Yusuf and his beauty, Ayub and his patience, then look at the man who shall pass by, who is like the moon and sun in radiance and like the stars shining bright. Jundub says, by Allah, I turned around and I saw nobody other than Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullahi alayhi. That's when the ayah comes and says, وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ. Everything we manifested into a specific Imam. What is Allah saying? He's saying Wilaya is the juice of prophethood. It's the summarization of revelation, and it's the condensation of the messages of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning everything came together. It was the skim. Therefore, when specific individuals come and say, we don't believe in the Wilaya, Habibi, you're not believing in Islam. That's why Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam comes and he says, Salah is only accepted for those who believe in the Wilaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imam al-Baqir, our fifth Imam, he comes and he says that Allah commanded mankind to believe in 5 things: Salah, Hajj, Zakat, Sawm, and Wilaya. Imam Baqir continues, he says, the irony of all ironies is that the people put strong emphasis on the first 4, but they neglected the last one, which is the most important, meaning Wilaya. Look at the importance of Wilaya. He says, مَا أَكَدَ اللَّهُ عَلَى شَيْءٍ مِثْلَ مَا أَكَدَ عَلَى الْوِلَايَةِ. Imam Baqir alayhi salam says. Another hadith that comes and shows us the importance of Wilaya, which comes and tells us those who neglect Wilaya could be compared to the devil. Somebody says, brother, that's exaggerated. No, take it easy. No. Hadith by Imam alayhi salam. Imam Rullah, what does he say? He says, those who refuse to prostrate down to Adam are the same as those who refuse to give bay'ah to Ali ibn Abi Talib. Please understand this fundamental hadith of Imam Rullah, our 8th Imam. He says, those who refused, yes, to prostrate down to Adam, which was who? Who refused to prostrate down to Adam? Iblis, yes? Are the same as those who refused to give bay'ah to Ali ibn Abi Talib, and those who rejected away from the authority of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now, who was that? That's inshallah for your own historical knowledge. Those who refused to give bay'ah to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen is compared by Imam Rullah to the devil, not me, not Ali. Not even a simple human being who is a rawi of hadith. No. It's an infallible Imam. And an infallible doesn't speak unless Allah tells him to say something. وَمَا يَنطِقُ عَنِ الْحَوَىٰ هَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. He doesn't speak from simple vein. He speaks except what Allah reveals to him. Therefore, when I neglect Wilaya, in essence, I'm neglecting the ethos of the religion of Islam. It's not some secondary issue. Some people, wallah, it's amazing. They have this idea that Allah created the universe, Nubuwwah, Tawheed, Aqid, He put everything intact, and then he saw 5 cute individuals, Muhammad, Ali, Fatima, Hussein. He says, mashallah, these are nice guys, so they become part of the religion. The irony is where? It's the exact opposite. Allah first created the love of Muhammad, Ali, Fatima, Hassan, Hussein, and then He established existence upon those 5 individuals. That's why when the Prophet of Islam comes in and says, to everything there is a face. And the face of Islam is love of Ahlul Bayt. Therefore, Wilaya is the manifestation of the lessons and the examples of Islam. Now, as I mentioned, Wilaya isn't only something that began with Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is an essential point. It's something that ended with Ali ibn Abi Talib. Meaning what? Adam was the initiator of Wilaya. He continued it until Nuh. Nuh transferred it to Ibrahim. Ibrahim transferred it to, for example, Musa. Musa transferred it to Isa. And Isa then transferred it to the Holy Prophet of Islam. Meaning, Wilaya isn't something that was initiated by Amir al-Mu'mineen. It was something that was completed by Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. That's why when the poet, he comes and he puts it quite beautifully, what does he say? He says, Wilaya was initiated when the angels went down. And it was completed when the hand went up. Wilaya, it was initiated when the angels went down. Allah commanded the angels to push it down to Adam. Yet it was completed when the hand went up on that blessed day of 18th, when the Prophet came and said, أَلَا مَنْ كُنْتُ مَوْلَاهُ فَهَذَا عَلِيُّ الْمَوْلَاهُ اللهم وَالِ مَنْ وَالَاهُ وَعَادِ مَنْ عَادَاهُ وَانْصُرْ مَنْ نَصَرَهُ وَاخْذُلْ مَنْ خَذَلَهُ. Therefore, Wilaya is something that began with Adam. Now yes, it was completed by Ali. Yet was it ended by Ali? No. Hassan completed that Wilaya. Hussein continued that Wilaya. Until it reached the 12th and final Imam. Meaning, if I as a human being, and I conclude with this, if I as a human being want to honor Fatima, who is the manifestation of Wilaya, Wilaya today is with Sahib Zaman. Yes? If I want to honor Fatima, I first have to understand my role in the coming of the 12th Imam. Honoring Fatima comes through honoring Mahdi. I can't honor Fatima, I can't simply cry about Fatima and, shed tears about Fatima and clap for Fatima. No. Allah says, love Fatima, but show that love by loving the 12th Imam. Show that love by expressing your obedience to the 12th Imam. One of the saddest things you'll find in the communities today is that there's a neglection towards the advent of our 12th Imam. Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, he has one goal and one goal only, to continue the message of Fatima to Zahra alayhi salam. That's why within the hadith of the Holy Prophet of Islam, he never comes and says, Ya'ti al-Mahdi min wildu Narjis. The mother of Imam Mahdi is who? Narjis, yes? Narjis, as mentioned within the hadith, is never referred to as the mother of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. In what sense? The hadith of the Prophet always comes and says, Ya'ti al-Mahdi min wildu Fatima. ومعه المسيح عيسى بن مريم يأتي ويملأ الأرض قسطا وعدلا بعد أن ملأ ظلما وجورا. The Prophet comes and says, Mahdi will come who is from the descendants of Fatima. Why does he say Fatima? Habibi, Imam Mahdi is not the son of Fatima. He's the son of Narjis. Why does he say Fatima? Because the Prophet is trying to strike the same exact comparison that I'm striking. He comes and he says Fatima is, yes, not biologically the mother of Imam Mahdi, yet spiritually and through the message that they both came to spread to the world, she could be considered as the mother. Meaning Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, one of the first things he's going to do is that he's going to go where? He's going to go to Karbala. And he's going to seek revenge for Fatima to Zahra alayhi salam. He's going to say, Ya li tha'arat jaddi al-Hussein. Because of the love that Sahib al-Zaman has for Fatima, the first thing he's going to do is going to go in revenge for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Yes, I have to understand my role in the coming of my Imam. Many of us have this unbelievable idea that comes and says, that Imam Mahdi is in some other world. He's disconnected from me. He's somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle. You'll find somebody that come and tell you, Imam is in the Bermuda Triangle, and he has nothing to do with me. What could I possibly do in hastening the reappearance of my 12th Imam? Me, this despotic, literal creature, I could hasten the appearance of that grand human by the name of Mahdi, who prophets have prepared for, who Imams have foretold us about. Yes. Number one, I need to understand Imam Mahdi is here. Imam Mahdi is with us. For goodness sake, he's probably witnessing what's happening to the Shia today. Do you think it doesn't hurt Imam Mahdi when he sees the grave of Hujr bin Adi being exhumed? Do you think it doesn't hurt Imam Mahdi when he sees the marqad of Ja'far al-Tayyar ibn Abi Talib being burnt? Allah is difficult for the Imam. Yet the Imam, even more difficult than that, he sees that we're not preparing for him. He says, I want to come, but the green light switch is with you, not with me. Neither is it with Allah. Yes, Allah, He's the ultimate decider of when Imam Mahdi comes. Yet Allah's decision depends on our preparedness. That's why they say there was once a man who doubted the coming of the 12th Imam, just like many people do. He was in the sitting of Abu Ghraib in Iraq. He was being tortured to such an extent that he fell unconscious. They say that the Imam, or they say that this man, he falls asleep and he sees Imam Mahdi in his dream. He tells him, Ya Imam, how many times did you hear me call upon your name? I said, Ya Mahdi, please come and aid me. Adrikni ya Sahib al-Zaman. Not once did you come and protect me from the whips of the evil Ba'athi regime. He told him, oh man, I have a question for you before you begin to doubt who I am and doubt my presence. How many times did they whip you on your back? He told him, oh Imam, they whipped me 100 times. He told him, oh man, remove your shirt and count the number of whips that you have on your back. They say that the man would turn around, he would remove the shirt and he would begin to count the whips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until he reached 10. He would turn to the Imam, he would tell me, Ya Imam, I counted only 10, but they whipped me 100. They say that the Imam would turn around, he would remove his shirt. He would say, who do you think took the other 90? That Imam Sahib al-Zaman is there. Imam knows what's happening. Yet him coming depends on us. Therefore, if I want to honor Fatima, let me first strive to honor Imam Sahib al-Zaman. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma inna narghabu ilayka fi dawlatin kareemah تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتذل بها النفاق وأهله وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه وما قصرنا عنه فبلغناه. Brothers and sisters, let us all stand and recite Dua al-Hujjah with the loudest of our voices. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala accept your Aman and give all of the brothers and sisters who strove to make this majlis Mubarak, beginning with Hajj Ali and all of the brothers and sisters, many of the sisters you see who are standing here with the shirts representing Imam Zaman. Now of course one of the best names you can give to an organization is something that has to do with Imam Mahdi. You find it's called Imam Zaman Islamic Foundation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly make us from those who prepare for Imam Zaman. May Allah accept your Amal. And may Allah allow us to be ones who serve under the banner of the son of Fatima, Zahra, Sahib Zaman. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.